Hello everyone, this is Dr. Shijun Wang. In today's video, I am going to talk about the last movement of the Beethoven Grand Pathétique Sonata. This is also a quite famous movement. Yeah, people are familiar with the melody. It's in rondo form. However, if you really study this carefully, you will soon discover this is not only a rondo form, it's a sonata rondo form. And what do I mean by that? We know rondo form basically means you have this one section, yeah, usually we call it the A section, that keeps coming back, right? A, B, A, C, A, D, A, right? It keeps coming back. And how can you find a sonata in it? If we go through this very briefly, at the beginning, of course, that's the beginning of the A section. Okay, about 16, 17 measures later, this begins the B section. And then the A section comes back at measure 61. Actually, exactly the same. And then the C section comes at measure 78, the second half of 78. Completely different material. Okay. After A, B, A, C, the A comes back again in measure 120. Again, exactly the same, but this time it's quite short, right? Only 8 measures. And here comes the D section, and the D section begins with stealing one of the A section ending materials. Right, the right hand, and that's how the left hand begins, right? This melody was moved into the tenor range. However, after this beginning of the D section, every material we can see from the B section, however in a different key. This dolce section, okay, and that is where we can find this. This is 25 in B section. Okay, and also the triplet section. We can also find this in measure 37. So they are really like an exposition section and the recapitulation section. So the D section is a B section in a different key, if I put it that way. And of course the A section comes back, and that's where in the sonata form the coda begins. This is 171. However, this is the fourth time we hear this melody. The only thing that is different is how it begins, right? It no longer has the 3 dotted 8th note. And also this single note was changed to a chord. So maybe you can think about this. Maybe why did Beethoven write it this way? I'm going to talk about this little change at the end when we get there. So why is the form so important? The other day I was talking with my friends about getting nervous, right? How do you deal with the stage fright, the anxiety? And by knowing the form of a piece when you play, really it's kind of like you already learned the map before you go on a journey. You know the bigger picture, you know the structure, so that it helps with your memory, it helps you even with your confidence. Okay, so have that in mind. And also the rondo is deceiving. I mean, you think the rondo is easy because you have this one material that you keep recycling, but it actually is quite confusing because sometimes you forgot. Oh, I going to play the C section next or the D sections next, right? If you're not focused or if you're dealing with anxiety, then knowing, okay, I'm now in the recap section of the sonata rondo, that really helps. Okay, let's talk about how to play this. The biggest challenge I face in playing this, I learned this in my senior year in college. I used this. My teacher actually asked me to play this for my Juilliard graduate school audition. Um, and I was, of course, nervous. And I asked him, "This is an easy sonata, right?" People think, "Oh, if you haven't learned the sonata, try the pass." Actually, it's quite hard. Um, and even if this has probably compared with the late sonatas compared to the Appassionata, for instance, that has much less notes. And so I remember I struggled with how to start in the correct tempo. And the main factor to this is right hand starts with eighth notes. Left hand also starts with eighth notes, but totally different way of playing them. Right hand has staccato, and right hand is the melody, and left hand has legato, and it's the accompaniment. So I always, especially when I'm nervous, start too fast, and then my left hand cannot keep up. And of course, if you start too fast, it's the wrong tempo. So basically, I have to teach my right hand how to start with my left hand. So I practice like this all the time. Even before, I remember this in the audition, even before I play this movement, I do this on my lap to make sure the right hand starts in the right tempo. Of course, this is something I faced many years ago. If you have the same problem, practice this way. Okay, if you never think of that as a problem, please just forget what I said. Okay. What is the mood of this piece? That's also something quite interesting. If we only look at the beginning, it's almost uplifting, right? It's kind of light-hearted feeling. But the C minor has this natural tragic feeling to it. And if we do a little bit of Schenkering analysis, the shape of the melody always goes down. Of course, it goes up for a bit to G, and here D, that left hand also. I think he literally put this to show like maybe a little bit of second melody there that goes down to the main motive. On top, on the very peak, we have a diminish. So maybe kind of to tell you something. Oh, even the very top, there's danger behind it. And this is such a romantic treatment of melodic lines, right? We have romantic curves as its terminology, that it always goes up and finally it always drops down. So I wouldn't say this is a happy movement. The other thing we need to keep in mind is this repeated notes. All the repeated notes in the classical sonata, we have to have this direction. They always go to the end. We can't play the repeated notes exactly the same. You have to make it inevitable to resolve to the last long note. Okay, and even that thing, left hand has that too. Right? You have repeated notes resolving to a long note. Boom, 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 boom. It's the same thing. Last point I want to make sure I address is these left hand articulations. Most of the left hand were grouped into 4-note slurs, right? And in these 4-note slurs, we have actually a little bit of up and down motion. Right? That's how we show slurs. Again, in my previous videos, I often really talk about this. The slur markings, right? People say it's connected, it's the phrase marking. It has more to do with dynamic than you think, okay? So a slur means you have to go up and down. You have to give a phrase to show the phrase. But however, the end of this A section melody in measure 8, no slurs. So when there's no slurs, separate them. Right? When everything is with slur, suddenly no slur, it's another way of saying different things. Okay. At measure 16, the end of this whole A section, it finally goes up. And it's an authentic cadence, right? However, it doesn't make you feel settled. Why? Because they're staccatos, right? There's up motion. It's not right? And it's short because there is a fall. Okay, again, you have that tragic feeling in it. In measure 25, in the B section, I mean, I almost think of this as the second theme in a sonata, because it's different. It's as contrasting as you can find. It's dolce. And the left hand, of course, we cannot work too hard. We cannot articulate it so that people can hear it, right? It's the accompaniment part. And however, I do a little bit special treatment. I make the downbeat a little longer, almost functioning as the pedal. Okay, and here a second melody comes, almost intruding for a measure and a half. Okay, and then the soprano takes over. Here in this dolce section, the right-hand melodic lines, it has more range than any materials before. So I would do a lot of crescendos and diminuendos, even when Beethoven did not put them down. Okay, in measure 44, we have this. It's really a sudden change of the texture, right? Before we had arpeggios, we had scale-like figurations, and here we have suddenly the texture of a chorale, and I think this is a choir section, right? It's a choir singing. And usually in other musical genres, namely opera, what happens when the choir takes over? Very, very typically, the choir section would be communicating to the audience, commenting what just happened in the plot, what just happened in the story. So the choir, well, of course, never say never, but very often the choir is not part of the story. The choir is communicating what happened. Oh, how cruel what just happened, or how lovely what just happened. But they're singing this to the audience. So they always have this uninvolvement, right? They're not part of the story. almost like a commentator. So here, Beethoven put piano there. But interestingly, in this, it's still that word, the same repeated figuration. So you have to go to the end. And now the story comes back. And here we have to really practice how to connect, almost like a relay race. Right? We don't want to have any gaps in between the hands. Right? Do not make this uneven, especially in the timing. And the only part so far that we have reached fortissimo is here, the end of the B section, and in the sonata form, this is the end of the exposition. And still, in this kind of tremendous forte part, we still have a downward scale. So this fate of always failing still is present here. And now let me talk about C section. The C section in the sonata form functioning as the development, it's quite a different feeling. And this is pure, the species counterpoint, left hand and right hand, and they have a voice exchange every 4 measures. So very almost religious feeling. But one thing here I often see when my students are playing, they try to slow down. Yes, we changed from mainly eighth notes and then triplets, and suddenly for a while we only have half notes. The natural instinct tells us, oh, this is a slower part, this is more calm part. Yes, that's all true. However, when we are playing slower part, we should not think the term slow. We should think of moving forward. And how do we do that? We subdivide, right? If we do 1, 2, 1, 2, we get slower unconsciously. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. But if we count 1 and 2 and 1 and if we subdivide that end, of course we are not playing anything on the end, right? It's yourself imagine that end, but it gives you the drive to go forward. 1 and 1 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. And that especially comes handy when we have the syncopation, of course. And after about 20 measures, we have, and here we have to make sure we keep it not rushed. So to really keep this consistent tempo, we have to really take so many tests, right? Not be too slow when the note values are longer, not be too fast when the note value comes back to the eighth notes. And here at the end of this C section, we have to, this is something related to the reading. Right hand comes in after a 16th note rest. So right after the left hand note, right hand has to play. But the left hand comes after a 8th note rest. So I often hear students play, they just come right in, and that really totally lost track of the rhythm. If we count each 16th note one beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, for 2 beats, we count 8 times. That would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So actually, the left hand has to wait 2 counts before it comes in. Yeah, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then you will end up losing 1/16th note value. And the A section comes back. The D section really is the B section in a different key. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the D section. The very, very last time of the statement of the A section, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, we no longer see the first 3 staccato notes, and then this note, instead of a single note, it's a chord. What could Beethoven mean? Why couldn't he just say do exactly the same as he did 3 times before this? My understanding, right? This is nothing. This is my aesthetics. This is my understanding. Is that this last statement is reminiscent of what happened. It's not so involved because it's not in reality. Only here, when the left hand comes in, and then we have the reality. Right? Still, it's to fight, right? It's to struggle, to conquer. Especially when we see how many, maybe 10 sforzando in a row. And usually when they have more than 3, it means crescendo. But when we reach the limit of the dynamic change, we do it with time a little bit, but not with the very end. From 4 last measures, 2 question marks, right? Not only we have to play this in time, we have to really be very careful with note values. And then the last note, 1 quarter note. And after this, we have a fermata that we have to keep the tension for a little bit longer. Thank you for watching this episode. If you watched towards the end, I appreciate that. Next week, I will start a brand new sonata by Mozart, the F major sonata K332. And I will talk, in that video, I will talk about a very, very important approach of Mozart sonata, the operatic approach. We know that Mozart is his most achievements are in his operas, and himself would be really laughing in his dreams if people consider him the best opera composer. That's his dream. So even when he's composing for piano solo sonatas, he is thinking of the forms, of the structures, of the characters in opera. So only if we understand that part, we can play the piano sonata with the right style. So please subscribe. If you like my content, please subscribe, and also please turn on the bell so that when I upload this important video regarding to the Mozart sonata, you will be notified very soon. Thank you so much for watching. See you next week with Mozart.